Chapter 16, Mount Mayaboku. Naruto. Opening his eyes, he was met with light shining on his face. Everything seemed blurred. Naruto quickly put his hands in front of his eyes to see clearly. His blue eyes roamed around, noticing that he was in a weird room. The walls were brown and weren't vertical like they usually are. The walls looked almost bent, making Naruto wonder how this house even worked. He could smell the scent of something boiling inside his room. His eyes went to a pot that looked made of something of dark color, beneath fire burning boiling whatever inside. The smell came from it, and Naruto wondered what was inside. His eyes turned back to the open window where the light of the sun came from. It wasn't a window, more like a hole in the wall. He slowly stood up and looked outside to see the bright blue sky, which put a smile on his face, but he immediately noticed that he wasn't in the hidden leaf here. The grass and ground were the same. He could see a weird tree that looked like big leaves raising from the ground. In the tip of them was a small hole and water came out, falling in the lake. Naruto wondered where he was, but he couldn't shake the weird calm and relaxing feeling he was getting from this place. His eyes then turned to look at some giant toad statues. He slightly scratched his cheek, wondering what kind of place was this. He closed his eyes but couldn't feel anyone around. The door opened, and Naruto to see a toad looking at him. For a moment, he just looked at him and closed his eyes tightly, thinking this was some weird dream. "You woke up, Naruto boy," the toad spoke, much to Naruto's surprise. His eyes widened. Talking with Kurama made the situation less weird, but still, he didn't know who was this toad. He noticed the toad was wearing tiny clothes. Finally finding his voice to talk, his blue eyes turned to look at the toad's yellow ones. "Who are you?" Naruto asked the toad. "Oh, Jiraiya boy hasn't talked about us. My name is Fukusaku," the toad introduced himself. Naruto's understood who the toad was. His godfather had told him that he had the toad summoning contract. But at the same time, wondering where Toad Gigi was, why he wasn't here, and where even he was in the first place. Noticing the hesitation, "You don't need to be afraid. And Jiraiya will come soon. He was even the one who brought you here," he explained, and Naruto nodded his head in understanding. "Kurama? You there?" Naruto asked, wanting to know if Furball was asleep. "Right here. Where else would I be?" Kurama asked with an open eye looking tired. "Oh, okay, just wanted to know if you were awake," Naruto replied mentally and turned his eyes to Fukusaku, who was looking at the pot cooking something. He turned to look at Naruto. "How about something to eat?" "Until Jiraiya boy comes here," Fukusaku suggested, and Naruto nodded hungrily. "Yes, Fukusaku-sama," Naruto replied respectfully and kneeled in front of the toad who was smiling at him. Naruto could see the same smile he saw from Toad Gigi, Hokage Gigi, and Tuchon. But Naruto wondered why he couldn't feel the toad. He could feel the emotions but not the chakra inside him, making him wonder if the toad even had chakra or maybe a different kind. "Naruto, he's using sage chakra, you can't feel him," Kurama replied inside his head, now fully awake. "Sage chakra, what's that?" Naruto asked, interested in what that meant. "Is chakra from nature itself. You will be able to feel his chakra only when you can use sage chakra as well," Kurama replied. Naruto nodded in understanding and felt something touching his shoulder. Escaping his thoughts, he saw Fukusaku touching him with a cane. "You zoomed out, okay my boy?" he asked worriedly. Naruto just nodded his head. "I'm alright, just a talk with Kurama," he replied and saw his eyes widen slightly. "So he does talk to you?" "I have to say when Jiraiya told me you were friends with him, I didn't really believe it," he replied with a slight chuckle at the end. Naruto narrowed his eyes slightly, and his blue eyes turned like ice. "Why is that?" "Kurama is a good friend," he replied, not liking talking wrong about him. "I didn't mean anything, I just found it surprising." "That's all," he replied and grabbed a bowl for both of him and Naruto. The redhead smiled at his response and saw Fukusaku fill the bowl for him and one for himself. He handed it to him. Naruto looked down to see that it was soup, with a small thing that looked like a sausage but more white than usual. There were a few fruits around. We don't usually eat this dish, but I know you wouldn't like what we usually eat, so Shima made it for you, he said and started eating the dish. Naruto wondered what was the usual dish, but decided to eat for now before it got cold. While eating, Naruto couldn't help but remember the screams of the people he killed. The trees tearing them apart, he knew it wasn't his fault. He was protecting himself from stupid people but still couldn't help but feel guilty for what he did. Naruto felt like a huge weight was on his shoulders and was getting heavier each day. Naruto stopped eating and looked at his right hand. He still could feel it. Before the bad shinobi went to cut his throat, his right hand had touched the ground, and his chakra had gone to his right hand, and the trees grew and killed everyone nearby. Demon, you're a demon. You child of sin, why can't you just die? Die, demon. Kill him. You took my family away. Naruto felt hot tears on his cheek. The hateful glares, the words, the hatred. Now the beating was too much for him. What has he done to deserve any of this? Naruto understood the village would never see him as anything but a demon who took away their family. Who killed them without mercy? Die. Just die, demon. You killed my father. You heard the fourth is dead because of him. Your parents abandoned you, demon. No, that's not true, they loved me, ha 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 ha, who would ever love you, demon? Naruto, he opened his eyes and turned to see his Tojiji standing in front of the door leaning against the wall. More tears rolled down his cheek, and Naruto jumped like an arrow to him. He hugged him and cried his heart out. Jiraiya looked down at his grandson in all but blood, and it broke his heart to see him in pain. These were times when he wished that Minato had sealed Kyuubi to someone else. He knew it wouldn't be fair, it was selfish, and Minato had a big heart to do something like that, but looking at Naruto. I'm here, my boy, just let it out, he said quietly and rubbed his red hair. Naruto kept crying for an hour against his chest. Kurama talked to him, trying to ease his pain. Naruto stopped and slowly looked up at his Tojiji and opened his mouth to speak, and his mouth felt dry like a desert. He was happy to see him again. Naruto hoped he would stay longer with him and not leave him alone. I know what you want to say, and isn't your fault. What they did is on them, not you. Never you. Jiraiya started rubbing his hair with his right hand. That seemed to calm Naruto, who nodded his head. After minutes of silence, the redhead turned to look at Fukusaku again. Where am I? Naruto asked quietly. You're in Mount Mayaboku, the place of the toads, Fukusaku said and walked towards the door. Naruto glanced at Tojiji, and he gave him a reassuring nod. He made a small smile and followed him outside. Looking outside now, the place looked larger than inside the little house. Naruto could see a waterfall further away. The ground was covered with weird plants he had never seen before. Their pungent smell of blue and yellow flowers rode the air as he ran his fingers through them in wonder and marvelous. A genuine smile slowly spread on Naruto's face, looking at the beautiful sights in front of him. Jiraiya smiled, seeing his grandson happy. Fukusaku moved in front of Naruto, looking up at him. Do you want to stay here, Naruto boy? He asked. Naruto raised an eyebrow, not really understanding, and he thought he was supposed to stay in the Hidden Leaf Village. He knew the toads had their contract with the Hidden Leaf Village, but still, and not to mention he was a Jinchuriki. Understanding the confusion in Naruto's face, Jiraiya put a hand on his shoulder, and Naruto turned to look at him. Listen, Naruto, Hokage has permitted you to stay here for 4 years to train. I will be here with you as long as I can stay. You can stay here until you feel ready to leave, Jiraiya informed him. His smile like that of Tuchan on his face, that smile warmed Naruto's heart to no end. Stay here? This place is much better than the place that hates me, Naruto thought, but then he remembered his only friends: Shikamaru, Choji, and Ino. He wondered if they would feel betrayed for not visiting them. "What about my friends?" Naruto asked with a tiny tone. "You can stay here for 4 years and then meet with them again at the academy. They already know you won't be around for some time because of their parents," Jiraiya replied, rubbing his red hair that looked to be shining under the light of the sun. Naruto looked downwards and wondered. He could feel his Tojiji wasn't lying. His mind then went to the academy, and a smile appeared on his face. A place where he could make even more friends. Naruto knew he would eventually meet them again, and the thought of Hidden Leaf Village reminded him of the people inside it. He would meet them again and would return as strong shinobi. He looked up at Tojiji and nodded his head in confirmation. Jiraiya smiled, and so did Fukusaku. Hearing that answer, he took a small paper note out of his pouch and handed it to Naruto, who had a confused look on his face. "What? A piece of paper?" Naruto asked, not understanding what he was supposed to do with it. "That is not an ordinary piece of paper, it is a paper made from a special type of tree, which is grown and fed with chakra. They are used in products that react to even the slightest hint of chakra in any number of ways. Depending on the nature latent in the chakra, this allows a person to know what nature affinity they have." Jiraiya explained, wanting to know Naruto's chakra affinity. Naruto nodded in understanding. "Good, just so you know, all you have to do is place your hand on the paper and channel a bit of your chakra to it and it will react to whatever affinity you have, so if you have an affinity to fire the paper will ignite and turn to ash. If you have an affinity to water the paper will become damp, if you have an affinity to earth it will turn to dirt. If you have an affinity to lightning the paper will crumple up and if you have an affinity to wind the paper will split in 2-inch, explained Jiraiya. Naruto nodded his head as he already understood it all and then channeled a small bit of his chakra into the paper. But what happened next surprised everyone, including Naruto. Instead of cutting into 2 pieces as Jiraiya thought, the paper was cut into 3 parts as it fell to the ground, where the first one turned to dirt, causing the grass close to turning to dirt, the second became damp, and grass became wet. The third turned to ash, causing even the grass close to burning slightly. This showed that Naruto had 4 natural nature affinities, 1 for earth, 1 for water, 1 for wind, and 1 for fire. Even Fukusaku was shocked by what he saw. It wasn't that someone had 4 affinities every day, but not just normal ones. He noticed the grass and knew Naruto had a high affinity for fire, water, and earth, and average wind affinity. At least for now. On the other hand, Jiraiya expected wind, earth, and water because of his wood style and wind because of Minato, but the fire was probably from Kushina. But she had average fire affinity, not high ones. Naruto looked downwards at the grass and wondered. He was confused while Kurama inside was smirking from ear to ear. Naruto could feel his happiness and wonder, why? He was about to ask why when his Tojiji talked to him. "This is a surprise, but a welcome one. Now since you have 4 different affinities, we can start training you once you finish your chakra control training," Jiraiya stated, then put a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Naruto noticed and could feel the seriousness of his face. "Naruto, what you did to stop the mob was wood style, the ability of Hashirama Senju. While you're here you can train and talk about it with the toads, but when you return to the village, I want you to keep it a secret," Jiraiya stated with seriousness but at the same time wondering how he could get in contact with Tsunade. She will need to know about Naruto and probably reveal some secrets. Naruto nodded his head in understanding with a big bright smile on his face. Jiraiya smiled back and couldn't help but think about Minato. He wondered if he had secrets that no one knew about. Jiraiya didn't know and decided to keep it a secret for now. "Well, now let's take a walk around Naruto boy," Fukusaku-sama suggested, and Naruto followed him eagerly since he liked the place around. Jiraiya watched them walk ahead and wondered if Naruto still wanted to become Hokage or did he have any other dream. Jiraiya wasn't sure, but whatever it was, he would always have his support. Ashera Uzumaki. The girl named Fu introduced herself with a big smile on her face. To Asha, she looked normal and wondered why the village would hate her. Is this your house? Asha asked, pointing at the house and wanting to start a conversation. Fu smiled and nodded her head, but Asha could see a hint of sadness behind her eyes. Yes, Asha, this is my home. Lord Shibuki made it for me, is nice and quiet here, she replied smiling and turning her head to her left. Asha turned to where Fu was looking to see a waterfall a bit further away. It looked beautiful. Asha could hear the sound of the waterfall could be heard, the sound of water moving was calming her. Fu, what about your parents, where are they? Asha asked, but hoping she wouldn't receive the answer she thought she would. Fu's gaze lowered, and she looked at a fly close to her foot. My father died in a mission, and my mum She died too years ago, she answered, her voice breaking. Asha moved closer and put a hand on her shoulder. I understand, my mum and dad died protecting me. I miss them every day, Asha said quietly, trying to ease her pain. Fu's widened and looked at her surprised, but kept quiet. After minutes of silence, Asha pulled away and decided to ask something that was bugging her. Fu, if you don't mind me asking, why did the villagers look at you like that? Ashera asked quietly. Fu felt a shiver of fear in her body. Her right hand touched the ring finger of her left hand. Her friend didn't know about her condition, and she was sure the moment she would reveal it, Asha would leave her alone as well. I hold the 7 tails, Chomei, she replied and closed her eyes tightly, waiting for the shouts and the insults to come but heard nothing. Fu slowly opened her eyes to look at her right to see Asha still standing there with a raised eyebrow. So, what? She asked, still not understanding what the problem was. Ashera knew how the seal worked. And having something sealed inside you didn't make you the beast itself. Fu's eyes widened at her question, and she was sure she had heard her wrong. Yo, you mean you don't have problems with that? She asked fearfully, still afraid that Asha would look at her with the same hateful eyes. Ashera just shrugged her shoulders. That doesn't change anything, she was interrupted mid-sentence when Fu jumped and hugged her tightly and smiled from ear to ear. We are friends, she shouted happily. Asha smiled and hugged her back. Fu was crying tears of joy. Pulling away, Ashera caught her breath from her bear-like hug. Yes, we are friends, Data Bane, she replied, smiling and wondering if there was any Uzumaki around. She was sure there must be others from her clan, and she wasn't alone. Fu, would you like to train? She asked, and Fu immediately nodded her head in agreement. While this was happening, Chomei was awake and wondered who this girl that had no problems with Jinchuriki was. At first, wondered if the girl was a Jinchuriki but couldn't feel any of her brothers or sisters inside her. She understood this girl Ashera had a big heart and just didn't care. Now Fu, you can finally have a friend, Chomei thought.
Alright guys, it's gonna conclude this part of What If Naruto Was the Red Flash. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I guess I gotta do a 2-hour special. Well, right now, I have to do a 2-hour special whenever I had 1,000 subscribers. So, faster y'all get this out. And, I mean, it could change because we're not there yet, but still. Right now it's looking like it's gonna be the 12 or the 2-hour thing, the 2-hour Red Flash video. But if the Red Flash series is finished by then, which I doubt, um, yeah, I mean we're gonna have to see. So this is gonna be part 13 of What If Naruto Was a Red Flash. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next part. Bye.